The Institute for Health and Healing is a comprehensive integrative medicine program at Sutter Health, dedicated to healing people and transforming healthcare. Check us out at myhealthandhealing.org or on Facebook.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome. Can everyone hear me? Okay. My name is Maxine Barish-Reedon. I am the medical director for the Institute for Health and Healing here in Sacramento. We are proud partners with the Institute for Health and Healing in San Francisco. Our director there is Judith Tolson, who is sitting over here in the front. So this is our annual mini medical school community event that is put on with the collaboration of many people. That takes a lot of time to put on events like this, and many people across the Sutter system have participated, from our clinics and people in the Bay Area to people here in Sacramento as well. Much of my office staff is here tonight, including our practitioners sitting here in the front row. We have 4 clinicians now in our program, as well as 2 acupuncturists, a behaviorist, a nutritionist, and so we've been growing and exploding with interest in what we're doing, and we're very excited that you're here. We hope that you will come and learn more about us and support us. Philanthropy and the kind of work that we're doing now is hugely important, so we appreciate every kind of support that our community can offer us. We in this program believe that this kind of medicine is the future of medicine. We are working to help understand why people have become ill in the first place, and to help people find the path that they need to help restore health and wellness. We've spent far too much time in medicine treating symptoms, and we haven't spent enough time really looking at what led to people becoming ill in the first time, and what we can do to help turn that around. For those of you who don't know the history of our program, it was started by a visionary oculoplastic surgeon in San Francisco, Dr. Bill Stewart. Bill led the program for many years. He started with a lecture series at California Pacific Medical Center, and from there grew that into a clinic. We were the first certified integrative medicine clinic in California. The program in the Bay Area now includes 3 other clinics, as well as programs in some of our other hospitals and clinics. So we're very grateful to Bill. Judith has been with Bill since the onset. We're very, very grateful for our founders and all of the support they've had in really leading the way in this work. So just a big shout out to Judith and everyone else. Thank you. I also want to acknowledge the Roberta Neustetter Foundation, which has provided philanthropic support in San Francisco as well as in Sacramento for these programs. That support has allowed us to really put on these wonderful events. I also want to acknowledge some of our sponsors who are here tonight. You probably met some of them at the table earlier, and that includes the Hadassah Women's Jewish Organization and Soilborn Farms, which is an extraordinary organic working farm and environmental program, and environmental steward here in Sacramento, really seeking to teach the next generation of farmers and to teach children and their families how to eat and grow healthy food, which is medicine for our bodies. So we're very grateful for our sponsors here tonight. So anyway, we have 2 wonderful speakers tonight. We're going to start with Dr. Eric Hassid. Eric is the Associate Medical Director of our program here in Sacramento. I've known him for many years. He recently joined our program here in Sacramento. He earned his medical degree at George Washington University School of Medicine. He is board certified in integrative medicine by the American Board of Physician Specialties. He is also boarded in anti-aging medicine and regenerative medicine by the American Board of Anti-Aging and Regenerative Medicine, and he's one of the smartest doctors that I know. And he doesn't need slides. So Eric, why don't you come up? Eric's going to give a talk on functional medicine and how that really helps us to look at the causes of illness and what we can do to help ourselves to heal.
See, the talk is over. It was quick. You guys learn anything? Well, I want to thank everyone for coming. What a great turnout. I mean, this is the night the Kings are playing Houston, so you probably are smart that you came out tonight because they're going to get nailed anyway, so it doesn't matter. But really, it's been a great journey for me. Had an opportunity to start working here about 2 months ago, and it's been phenomenal. I mean, they're like a real family. You can get a sense that the team is very, very dedicated to the cause. They really are the true nonprofit in a sense that they really care about the community, and their vision is really amazing. So I want to really give a hand to all of them who've really put so much work into this and everything else that they do. So. On that note, so I've been doing functional medicine and integrative medicine for about 10 years, and it's been a nice transformation for me. And one of the areas that I think that I'm most interested in is this notion of the science of healthy aging. How many of you believe that we can stop the aging process completely? Okay, well, that's 2 people. That's pretty good, optimistic. Hate to burst your bubble. But I do believe this. I think most of us here in this room believe that we can make change that's going to be sustainable and that's going to improve our quality of life, our function, and hopefully our longevity. And I'm going to go through some of those issues with you tonight, give you a broad overview, and then we'll kind of go from there. So my overview is basically this. I'm going to start talking about functional medicine principles. How many of you have actually heard about functional medicine? Right on. Good. I can go quick through that one. I'll then go on to theories of aging and chronic disease, and then we'll talk a bit about enhanced physiological stress and its link to accelerated aging and chronic disease, what we need to accomplish in order to achieve the goals of the anti-aging effect, as we say, and then I'll mention 6 of the steps that you all can do to obtain optimal health and vitality. And then some concluding remarks and some resources. So with functional medicine really, the goal of functional medicine is to try to understand more the physiological processes, not so much the actual diagnosis. Although it's important to understand what we're dealing with, it's more important to understand why we're dealing with it. And that's key for us. Emphasis should be placed on defining and managing the root cause of a particular health challenge over the symptom palliation, means just getting it better, just making you feel better. And I think that's sort of missing, I think, in traditional medicine today, unfortunately. And we understand that chronic illness is usually preceded by a period of declining physiology and biochemical function prior to the actual physical manifestation. In other words, so if I have Parkinson's disease, God forbid, then what happens is that 20 years before that, you start seeing physiology that's actually, the cells are starting to degenerate. And that is, so even though you're not having symptoms, you're starting to develop the process. And that happens with most chronic illnesses out there. And we sort of understand now that achieving health is the cornerstone of combating and preventing chronic disease. We know that the absence of disease does not necessarily equate to health. Does that make sense? So just because you've heard of the situation where someone gets a clean bill of health from their doctor, they go to their car, pull out their keys, and they drop dead of a heart attack, right? You've heard of that. And that actually happens because we're not really measuring their health status. We're measuring their disease status. We do know that genetics do account for something, but for the most of us, it's only about 20% of our health destiny. In other words, 80% is what we actually do. So the genetics gives you your blueprint. It tells you what you can be, but those genes can be turned on and off. And Sarah and I will be talking about that in terms of like how the genes can actually be set, but the actual expression isn't set. And that actually can influence 80% of your health destiny. There are of course exceptions, but it's nice to know that. We do know that the implementation of healthy nutrition and lifestyle habits can have a substantial positive impact on both managing disease as well as preventing disease. And actually it works by influencing our genetic expression. So it's nice. So even though people will get their genetic tests, we shouldn't be so negative about, oh my God, I have this gene, I'm destined for failure or for death. Not necessarily, we can actually make change. So in a nutshell, what are some of the relevant physiological issues that go on that lead to chronic disease and aging? And many of you probably have heard of this through the internet or just some conferences you may have gone to or whatever. In general, the physiological processes that lead to most, if not all, chronic diseases and aging are twofold. One is, many of you may have heard of the term free radicals. They're not from Berkeley, but actually they're like atoms with electrons on them. But basically, if you have too much of these sort of free radicals, arguably, we'll call oxidative stress or nitrosative stress, those are actually like BBs. They actually will destroy tissue. Now, we need free radicals because if we don't have them, we don't have an immune system. We don't have a cancer-fighting system. So in reality, we need to have some of that around. However, most of us, unfortunately, the way we lead our lives every day, have an excess of free radicals that are causing damage. And that's the key. So it's the excess of free radicals and our ability to withstand that's going to be a problem. And the other term is excessive low grade chronic inflammation. So in other words, people who have just the inflammation, the white cell system is activated and they're producing inflammation, we need it, again, but if it's excess, it actually damages tissue. You may have heard about the brain on fire concept, where if you look at on Time magazine, there was a picture of the brain on fire. And what it was basically depicting was patients with Alzheimer's disease. And what it basically means is that inflammation within the brain itself is ultimately what causes all these diseases like Alzheimer's and Parkinson's. So getting that under control, the excess, is critical for success. So what does all this result in? A lot of crazy stuff here, right? So you see I'll just briefly go through it. But typically what happens is our bodies have these antioxidants, which are our own endogenous antioxidants. But when we have a lot of oxidative stress or inflammation, those antioxidants naturally will get depleted. So we have less protection. We also can cause some DNA damage, which is our genetics, both in the mitochondria, which we'll mention in a minute, and the nucleus. Those two areas really are important because DNA is, again, the blueprint. But what if the DNA gets damaged and it starts coding for something different, like a cancer cell, a problem, an abnormal protein? Then that's what starts to happen with the aging process. And one of the biggest points that I want you to take home is that at the end of the day, it is the reduction in the function of these little organelles that derive from bacteria many, many years ago called mitochondria. And those mitochondria produce pretty much 90% of our total energy production. So imagine you don't have gas in your car. All of a sudden, if you have a mitochondrial dysfunction or your gas is not there, you're not going to be able to produce energy or move your car. Well, that is basically what happens to your cells. And the key thing is that pretty much every single chronic disease at some point has with this some level of mitochondrial dysfunction and the ability to repair itself and to make new ones. People didn't think years ago that you can actually make new mitochondria, but we actually make them every day with some of the things we'll talk about. But if you have chronic disease, you begin to see that there's not a lot of energy being produced, and these same mitochondria that are so helpful for us can self-sabotage because they also produce free radicals as part of their function. So if they're not functioning well, they're going to start producing more free radicals and cause a vicious cycle. And then other things happen too. Our DNA, the tips of our DNA that determine our lifetime, the telomeres, get affected. They get shortened. Our ability to protect our cell membrane and the integrity of proteins gets affected, and that causes its own problems. We can get some damage because of too much excitation and hormonal changes. Long story short, there's a lot of things that happen as a result of all this inflammation and oxidative stress that leads to disease. So if you have a chronic disease, means that you have cellular dysfunction. That's what happens that leads to chronic disease. If you have accelerated cellular aging, that will lead to cell death. And again, the key thing is, the point to note, is that mitochondrial dysfunction is one of the main biological factors that's associated with chronic disease and aging. Keep that in mind. So what happens? So what happens with all this stuff? Well, you get more cancer. You get more immune problems. You get autoimmune diseases. You can't fight off infections. You get weight issues. You get diabetes. You get heart disease, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, aging, weakness, everything. In a nutshell, everything. This is a handout that I give most of my patients or clients who come in. This is like a little barometer for them. I kind of go through it really quickly with them, and the idea is there's 8 different areas or categories that are what I call are categories that can lead to physiological stress. So what you see here is you'll see like a category of physical stress. You'll see like pain, chronic musculoskeletal pain, medical stress, which basically means too many medications, too many procedures that causes stress on our body. Nutrition and gut health. That's a big area. You've probably all heard of the microbiome and how that impacts our gut health. Well, the nutrition is one of the biggest drivers of the changes in your bacteria microbiome. So we really pay attention to that a lot. Activity and exercise. Too little and too much. Whoever thought you can do too much exercise, but you actually can, i.e. frequent marathon runners who are not ready to do marathons, those people actually look horrible on paper. Horrible. Environmental, we live in Aggie Town, right? There's plenty of pesticides, herbicides, a lot of different toxins. So we got to keep that in mind because those are real big cellular disruptors. Genetics plays a role, and there's certain genetic situations like Huntington's disease, you can't really prevent that, but at least to note that most genetics can be influenced, thankfully. And then of course, I think most of us really don't pay as much attention to this. We always think that, oh, I sleep fine, I sleep great. Then you ask them in the morning, are you refreshed in the morning? No, not really. So well, then you don't sleep well. It's very common. Most people don't really sleep very well. Quality and quantity. And then of course, another big one, emotions. Not just like being happy, but feeling gratitude, feeling joy, spirituality, communication and community, purpose. Those are probably the biggest. Max and I were talking before. She was commenting that one of the biggest indicators that she's heard about that determines longevity is community and love. So I think that's a real big factor that I think most of us we lose that a little bit. At the end of the day, all these things here, all these issues will lead to all this crazy biology that I mentioned to you briefly before that leads to chronic disease. And that's why it's not so critical that we understand necessarily the actual diagnosis, but understand the process and the things that drive process. And that's the notion of physical, functional integrative medicine. And it works pretty well. So what are some of the basic things we do? So the first thing you want to do is always remember your foundation, like a foundation on a house. You're not going to put the roof on before you build the foundation. So what are the foundations? Support, healthy oxygenation. Sounds kind of silly, but people don't breathe very well. We tend to breathe shallow and not deep enough. And so as a result of that, we're not getting proper oxygenation. Hydration. Most of us, including me, do not drink enough water every day. And nutrition is key, which we'll talk about. The idea of elimination and detoxification. Our body's having to process a lot of stuff every day, so we've got to make sure that we take care of business there. And then the other things we want to always do is promote rest, relaxation, and repair. Because all of your repair mechanisms occur when you're actually sleeping and resting. So we promote stress reduction, optimal restorative sleep, mobility and flexibility, and then life balance. So those are the first things that we actually talk about before we do anything else. It's amazing how we have to work on that. Then, once we feel like we've achieved that goal or close to achieving that goal, then we start saying, okay, now I'm going to challenge you. Now you're going to challenge your body. So what do you mean? Our bodies are designed to be challenged. We need a little bit of stress every day. That's called hormesis. What doesn't kill you makes you stronger. That's the notion. So that's what exercise is. That's what intermittent fasting is. They're all forms of biological stressors that our bodies will adapt to if they're ready to do so. If you do too much, you cause too much damage. If you do too little, you get nothing out of it. It's finding the happy medium. So examples of this hormetic response are intermittent fasting and mild caloric restriction, which many of you have heard about, challenging cognitive and physical exercise, and of course supplementation with very interesting cutting-edge natural supplements that have what they call hormetic type or caloric, low caloric mimetic type of agents, which we'll talk briefly about. So in the 6 steps, we work a lot on nutrition and gut health. Diet. So people ask, what is the best diet? It's like, well, it probably depends on the person. But in general, I think we all agree that keeping your glycemic or carb load low is a good idea. We talk about the ketogenic diet and brain health. That is something that's been now being shown. Ketogenic and cancer patients, and now some research looking into that. So I think that when people keep the carbs low and they support with healthy fats, moderate amount of healthy protein, and a lot of vegetables, more than fruits, people tend to do a lot better. That is a much, much better overall diet for most of us sitting in this room. We also want to promote a healthy gut bacteria. The bacteria communicate with everything, and they basically control everything. You wonder if we control them or do they control us? Very interesting. So the notion of using nutrition as the mechanism of influencing your bacteriology in your gut is key. The notion of using fiber or prebiotics to feed the healthy biotics can be quite important. Sometimes using probiotics, whether they be from food or from just supplements, can be very valuable for patients. And of course, some gut repair nutrients, things that help repair the gut that may be a little bit injured or not really doing its job in communicating information. And then the hormesis part of what we talk about, the stressor part of what we do, would be, from a food perspective, is intermittent fasting and mild caloric restriction. And I think Sarah will be talking more about that in a minute. And then the other thing we talk about are some of the nutritional and herbal supplements. And we obviously have the essential nutrients. Those are things that typically we can't make, so we have to get them from the outside. That's your multivitamin and mineral. People argue, do I need a multivitamin and mineral? It's probably personal, depends on the situation. But I think if it's a high quality, well-balanced one, it's probably of some value. Conditional nutrients is the next category. Those are things that tend to be made at somewhat of a level in our body, but under certain situations we can deplete them. We're not able to make them very, very well. And when we're older and we have chronic disease, it can be a problem for us. And those are things like coenzyme Q10, which many of you have heard about, or things like lipoic acid and many others. Those are nutrients that are made, but they can be depleted. And if you deplete these conditional nutrients, you really can run amok with regards to your mitochondria. And then the really interesting research now is coming on these natural hormetic agents. Are there substances that can mimic exercise? Are there substances that can mimic, intermittent fasting? The answer is there are. They don't replace it, but biochemically they do some of the same things. They trick your body into believing it's a small stressor, so your body creates a great response. So resveratrol, you may have heard of that in red wine. Turmeric, curcumin, green tea extract, carnitine, herbal adaptogens. And there's two really interesting ones that are getting a lot of popularity now is one called PQQ. Most people probably haven't heard of that one. And the other one is NAD riboside. They're now showing that they can actually help build mitochondria. And PQQ has been studied for brain cognition, and they found that people who got on PQQ, especially if they took some CoQ10, had much better cognition than those who did not. And the thought is that it enhances mitochondrial growth. What about exercise? How many of you exercise regularly here? Oh, look at that. Good job. So we have 3 different forms of exercise. We have cardiovascular training, which is important. We have resistance training, which is weight training. And we have flexibility, agility training. Long story short, they're all very important, but there are probably some forms of exercise that might be a little bit more cost-effective and time-effective than others. So like high-intensity interval training, which I think Sarah might be talking about that a little bit. If not, that's okay. But high-intensity interval training is doing really fast for a short period of time, and then recovering, and then doing fast for a short period of time. That is quick and dirty, and gets great outcomes when it comes to body composition, weight management, blood sugar regulation. That seems to be the way to go for people who can do it. And the other thing is weight training. Most people always forget to do weight training. They think it's something that's not important, but it's really, really important for so many different areas. And then, of course, flexibility. Why is fitness so important? Well, we know fitness is important for cardiovascular benefit and bone benefit and muscle, but we forget that if you do the right thing in the right amount, it's actually the best stimulant for brain growth. You may have heard that Parkinson's disease patients and Alzheimer's patients, the best treatment we have is exercise because it increases brain-derived growth factor. And when you do that, then your brain grows. There was a study looking at those individuals who had cognitive issues, those who had the highest fitness level had less brain atrophy, brain shrinkage. So we think that intensity matters, not just I'm going to walk for hours. That's great, but to get the outcomes you're looking for, your brain needs to see intensity. And of course, emotions are key. Meditation, relaxation, again, the social concept of communication, gratitude, giving, and purpose. Because we know that stress has a lot of impact on our physiology. Typically, if it's a lot of stress, it's negative. But if it's a good amount of stress, it's actually productive. So finding that happy medium, being able to sort of know how to chill down when you need to. And then, of course, the big thing is sleep quality. Most of us don't really have good quality sleep. So it's really important to make sure that we get 7 to 8 hours of high quality restorative sleep. And how do you figure? Well, if I wake up in the morning and I just feel like a truck hit me, then probably that's not good quality sleep. Even if I sleep 9 hours, there's something wrong. I'm not getting my deep sleep. I'm not getting, maybe I'm kicking, I'm jerking, I'm snoring, I'm doing whatever. All those things need to be addressed. Because if you don't get good sleep, you get more chronic disease, more hypertension, more weight issues, more everything. Again, all this stuff increases inflammation. Environmental toxins are key. We mentioned living in the ag town. So if in individuals who we feel they're highly exposed to pesticide, herbicides, plastics, heavy metals, whatever it may be, if they're heavily exposed, we may want to think about providing what we call detoxification therapies. Typically that might mean liver support nutrients, bowel cleanses, of course elimination diet, far infrared sauna, which my wife and I have one at home, and a heavy metal detoxification as well. So I think those are things that can be beneficial in the right population. And then lastly, hormonal health is really key. People always ask about, well, hormones are safe. If you do it right, they're safe. If you do it wrong and you choose the wrong one, they're probably not safe like anything else. So trying to make sure that people have optimal hormonal levels for their age is good. Some people require replacement, some people don't. That you'll get a lot of opinions on. But making sure that hormones are attended to is probably wise. So concluding thoughts. So aging and death, as we know, are inevitable. Sorry. But unhealthy aging is not, which is really nice. So at least we can live at a point where we can live with high quality and we can live a little bit longer and maybe avoid chronic disease to a certain extent. 80% of aging and chronic disease is related to nutrition, lifestyle factors, and environment. And these 80% are responsible for influencing the phenotype, which is the expression of the genes, and 20% constitutes the genetics of the gene. We always need to think about challenging our physiology through intermittent fasting, through exercise, through cognitive stimulation, whatever you might do, so that our bodies are constantly trying to adapt, and when they adapt, they get stronger, and when they get stronger, they get less disease and they live longer. So that's why people exercise, to create a little bit of a stressor. And strict attention to nutrition, lifestyle, and environmental factors are critical to achieving optimal health, vitality, and age management. And here's some recommended readings if you want, some websites. And that's it. Thank you for your attention. Appreciate it.